morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
You're muted.
Well,
there you go.
Good. Okay, let's try it again. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 514 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Cryo Media Network. Yeah. Today, recording day is Friday. Thank God I'm flat. Day. November 15th, 2024. And it looks like it's going to be an okay day here at the Beaver Lodge. There's a little bit of sun, but not as bright as it usually is when it's a nice clear day. So maybe some overcast coming. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Have a good show for you today. But before we do anything else, looking absolutely phenomenal in pink, Mr. Grizzly, how is your mental health doing today, sir?
Well, not terrible. I'm still not great. Still suffering from gastro issues, and I didn't sleep well last night. And of course, with the sertraline dreams, the dreams so vivid you wake up like you've never slept. Yeah, so that should be their tagline.
Jeez, that's altogether that's a lot.
Yeah. So whatever. I got a shitload of stuff to do today, so let's see what we can do this morning to get the day started correctly.
All right. Well, maybe a little good cheer, a couple of laughs, some love from the best damn fam and all of podcasting. Get the day started off all right. Okay. In the news, we can start with what you actually had in the description a little bit there, Mr. Grizzly. Canada Post is officially on strike. The Canadian Union of Postal Worker members had voted for a 72-hour strike notice, and that time has expired. And therefore, we're pretty much in it right now. Almost the minute after the deadline had passed, there were pickets that had gone up. So there are 55,000 Canada Post workers across the country that are on strike. Talks had been going on for well over a year. Canada Post had offered an 11.5% increase over 4 years, but the union pretty much said that they need to double that. They asked for 22%. The union's also asking for improved retirement benefits and better health and safety conditions. Canada Post says that due to the strike, some post offices will have to be closed and mail and parcel delivery will be suspended. Canada Post, unfortunately, is in a situation in which it is losing money annually. It's down almost $500 million this year alone. One of the major reasons for that is stuff like Amazon and people using other courier services like Courier and FedEx and UPS and all that kind of stuff. Shortly before the strike officially started, Canada's Labour Minister said that Ottawa was sending additional resources to the bargaining table, saying that Canadians need for them to reach an agreement. As you know, with the federal government, things have been changing a little bit because they used to let these strikes go on. And when the rail strike came on, because rail is so essential to how goods circulate in Canada, when both rail companies kind of colluded or conspired, I mean, they didn't even have to talk because there was only two of them. One sent a signal, the other one followed, to both go on strike at the same time or to have a lockout at the same time, thus crippling the country. The federal government had to intervene with the ports. It was okay while while BC was just on strike because there were still, or Montreal had a stoppage because BC was still working. But now that they would both be, not working at the same time, well, now they've had to bring in the mediator, given how long, the dispute in Montreal has lasted since. It seems that the Maritime Employers Associations are really digging in. And it seems that maybe the bad part of them having used this tactic by going to the Industrial Relations Board of Canada to get them to go into mandatory arbitration rather than ordering a back-to-work legislation is that, the employers are now back to the old game. Like, we can wait out the federal government because if things get bad, well, now they won't even do back-to-work legislation. They'll just go to the RCRB.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening now, and that's what we see happening with Canada Post, because they've been in talks for well over a year. Deadline is passed. They've gone sailing by. There's nothing happening. And, well, we're getting close to the Christmas season, so Canada Post knows that if it just waits, that the federal government is going to do it again, because why not? Now they've done it twice. So you teach people. The thing with using an innovative trick once when you need it is that you create the precedent of it being used, and then you teach people what their next strategic move is. And it's wait you out because you will cave. You've just found a new way of caving. That's pretty much it. So, but again, I mean, the counterfactual is to allow for goods and the shipping of things and the transfer of parcels through Canada Post and all that kind of stuff, and all the small businesses that rely on that, for example, to go through delays and stoppages and losses of income and all that kind of stuff, and have a whole bunch of people take a big hit. And, well, if you're in politics, well, you want to be popular. When you make 40 million people feel something rather than a few thousand, then that's not good for popularity. Just math. Right? So, but that's in a situation that we're in right now. So I would fully expect the people from Canada Post to just sit back and put their heels up on a desktop and just wait for things to get bad enough for the government to send them to arbitration. Now, it seems that the government probably saw this coming, because Ottawa is already sending the additional resources to the bargaining table, saying that Canadians need them to reach an agreement, which is what happened with the port workers.
Mm-hmm.
They did send in a federal negotiator, mediator, whatnot, to try and help, and it seems both parties agreed to that, but not binding arbitration, but someone to help. And the employers and workers still, well, how about put this way? I'm sure the workers would have liked to have had a deal so the employers didn't fight it within themselves to get to a place that would satisfy the workers. So now they're in the binding stuff. So that's what I would expect to happen here. That's probably now the new norm, because I remember when the Liberals used that move the first time, Lisa Raitt, who's no longer in government, but was once in that job, turned around, well, gee, if I knew I could have done that, I would have done that all the time from the get-go. So, That's probably a new unfortunately for those who are in the labor movement, a new precedent has probably been created where the government now doesn't have to worry about legislating and trying to get buy-in from other parties and worry about public embarrassment. Now you can just go to the RCRB now and impose binding arbitration. Now, of course, while binding arbitration doesn't get the workers maybe the most that they could get, it certainly does, hopefully, give them more than the workers. This is my final offer, take it or leave it thing. So it does get a dispute resolved faster. So I mean, I'm not poo-pooing in any way on binding arbitration. It's more like the road we take to get there.
Right.
Because binding arbitration is a very, 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 very good tool when used properly and everybody consents. Right. So yeah, Mr. Grizzly, do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, as stated in the write-up, it's like I do question how many people in urban areas will be affected by this, and for that matter, do the younger generations even care? I do recognize that there are some folks whose small businesses in urban areas rely upon Canada Post to ship their goods across the country at, they usually have an agreed upon rate so that they can do it for less money than a private sector service would. And also, you have to consider that Canada Post will deliver to areas that private sectors carriers just don't. Purelator will not deliver any Canada Post items. Now, you have to remember Purelator is owned by Canada Post, so that makes perfect sense. But they do sort of operate independently. But they said, we're not picking up the slack because we're going to honor our union brothers and sisters in this. So do you see, and I don't see it happening, companies like Amazon that use delivery services for the urban areas, and like say FedEx or UPS or DHL or any of the other ones, and I don't know what other ones there are, but I can't see them going to rural areas or small communities because it's just not worth their while. Whereas Canada Post, I mean, they lose money on deliveries of that nature, but it's a service, it's a Crown Corp service, and it's been designed to reach all Canadians. So there will be millions of people affected by this. Sure. How many million? I don't know. The vast majority won't feel it very much. And I think that's the truth because, unless, of course, like I said earlier, if you're a small business in an urban area who relies on shipping your goods to remote parts of the country, you will definitely be affected by it. You can also turn around and use a private sector one for something locally. But if you're sending out to rural Saskatchewan, well, here you go. Here's a comment from Facebook. Somebody watching on Facebook. Lorna Irish. We live in rural Saskatchewan, and I really depend on Canada Post for online shopping. There are very few places to physically shop nearby, and to get anything unique for gifts, etc., we have to depend on the mail. So, yes, rural areas, remote and smaller communities, absolutely. Without Canada Post, they're left, twisting in the wind. My question, though, is will anybody care when it comes to the majority of citizens, because so many of us live in urban areas now that it won't really directly affect us? Keeping in mind that small businesses in urban areas do ship across the country into different areas, and they will feel the pinch because they don't have an alternative source. If you want to ship to rural northern Saskatchewan, well, it's Canada Post or it's nothing, because it's not in the interest of, FedEx or whomever to ship one small product to an area that they don't normally deliver. So people are going to feel it for sure. People in urban areas, I don't think for the most part will, and probably a lot of them don't care. I care that individuals are able to earn more money, get better pay, get better benefits, get guarantees on their contract. That I care about. And I hope they're able to do that. Just, will the vast majority of Canadians give a shit? That's the big question. You were muted there, sir.
There we go. Yeah, I was. I heard when I was typing that it was picking up, so I was trying to mute while I was doing that. I agree with you. That is a real and pertinent question. It's salient like you would not believe, because I mean, everybody needs their regular mail, and they won't get that. But for all the stuff, everybody that buys stuff through Amazon, if you're shipping gifts or whatnot like this, you have so many more options. Of course, when you're in the urban area, I think what is it, 80% of us within like
Yes,
200 kilometers of the border or something. So I mean,
something like
but
that.
yeah, but even in that, even in that part, we still have smaller towns and whatnot like this that
Well, there's all
someone
kinds of small
eventually can
towns
make
around
the case.
in the Ottawa Valley here. There's
No,
all kinds of small
that's
towns
not
around the
profitable.
city, right? There's so
Yeah,
many small towns, small rural communities around Ottawa that are close enough that if you purchase from Amazon and you live in, say, Russell, Ontario, you're actually closer to the Amazon distribution warehouse than I am, right? Because
right.
there's one out that way. So, something like that, they won't feel the effect of the pinch because Intel Cobb and Dragonfly, and there's a number of them for local. But like I said, if you're living in Northern Ontario, it's Canada Post or it's nothing,
Yep,
right?
I
So
agree.
there will be a lot of people who will feel this. There's Cassie's saying, right here, husband's medical supplies via mail.
Yes.
So there will be a lot of people that will feel the pinch from this. Absolutely. My question is though, will because so many of us live in urban areas, will people take note and give a shit? And I think the sad comment is a lot of people won't. And I've already talked to people because what do I care? I'm like, it won't affect you, but what about, that person who relies upon a shipment of a medical device or a pharmaceutical product that only can be shipped via Canada Post to a remote area in Northern Ontario? What about that person? And they're like, what? Can't they just? No, those companies don't. Number one, they aren't able to ship pharmaceutical products, number one. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that to be the case. Number one, but
Mm,
number two, they don't service those areas because it's not worth their while. There's no profit in it. And then
mm.
somebody said, "Why don't we just if Canada Post keeps losing money, why don't we just shut it down?" I'm like, because there are millions of people who rely on it.
Well, that's the thing the point you've made previously on the show, not this show, but on our show in other episodes, that when things are a service, if they can turn a profit,
Mhm.
great, but they're not intended to. I mean, they still have to be operated efficiently, financially. I mean, it doesn't give you a pretext to just like throw money into a
Piss it
hole
away.
and careless.
Yeah.
But I mean, when the world changes, when you get disrupting technologies, all that stuff happens, but you still got to provide a service to an entire nation.
Mhm.
And sometimes those technological things break in such a way that they make you more profitable. And sometimes they break it in a way that make it less because it increases competition, right?
See this comment from
So
Tom Trask. The military loses billions a year. Shut them down. Right? It's like
exactly.
they're not expected to turn a profit. They're
Exactly.
not.
And where Canada was a crown corporation, it's the same thing via rail. You
Hmm.
know, but these are
It's a service.
services. Because could you imagine being a G7 nation without rail connectivity? I mean,
No.
it doesn't happen. So I mean, and everybody then goes and looks at, oh my God, I can't believe the loss, and we got to change the leadership. We got to run this like a business. They are, but a business that is a service, and not all services are profitable. It's just that simple. That was the situation with the news on TV back in the day.
Hmm.
The news was not profitable, but it was an essential service. You got access to a broadcast license to the public airwaves, and you're making money on that. You got to provide this service, information, journalism, allowing people
Hmm.
to know what's going on in the community, what's going on in their country, allowing the government to communicate with the people about what it is they're doing with their money and on their time. But now there's so much more competition.
Oh yes.
The rules have changed,
Well,
but you
and
still need
let's remember,
service.
when talking about a service, there are millions of Canadians that are serviced by the CBC
Right.
because the CBC was set up to make sure that every Canadian in every corner of the country had access to radio and television services from CBC. And they keep saying, let's defund it. I'm like, yeah, but what about the folks who don't have any other radio where they live? They
A
don't
nation
have
has
access to the information,
a
right?
nation has to have at least one fully nationwide media where everybody in the country can hear the same thing.
Well, the argument is, well, it doesn't. I'm like, well, if you look even to the south of us, our American friends and neighbors, they have PBS for television
hmm
and NPR for radio,
hmm
and those are publicly funded.
hmm
And you find a single person who would ever say we should just shut those down, and watch how quickly the response would be, are you out of your goddamn mind?
Now, they're publicly funded a little different. They do
Yes,
get a little bit, like I think PBS gets fewer than 2% of its budget from the government. So, but they're
correct.
publicly funded, as in raising money from the public. They have
They
their
have their
drive.
telethon drives, right? Their
Right,
funding drives.
exactly. Whereas the
It is
CBC
publicly
is
funded.
state funded,
CBC is direct. Yeah,
but still publicly funded, but state funded.
correct.
Right.
Well, and you remember on CBC radio, there are no no ads. They tried it
Yes.
once, and people hated it so much that they took them away. CBC television, a lot of their revenue is generated through ads. Now,
Yeah.
I do have issues with the CEO, Catherine Tate.
Yes. We
She's
all should.
paid too damn much money. She's an elitist. She said, we fired 600 people and then handed out bonuses to everybody. I'm like,
Yeah.
no. Okay, no company should do that ever. A crown corp that is in service of all Canadians should be punished and reprimanded for that. She should be slapped across the fucking back of the hand for that. I'm not going to get, if I say the face,
Not physically.
proverbially, not physically. She should be punished for it. That money that she paid out to executive bonuses should be drawn back and sent out to those people who lost their jobs and rehire them, because those bonuses added up to more than those 600 jobs did.
Hmm.
So her attitude, nah, it's time for you to go, ma'am.
Yeah.
Your attitude is terrible.
Yep.
And she is leaving soon. There's a good replacement coming in, and hopefully she will look at the employees as valued members of the corp
Yes.
and not do what Catherine Tate did.
I could not
I
agree
got
with you
coffee.
more. I got no notes.
I got to get a coffee. Sorry, I'll be right back.
Yep. No notes whatsoever. I am right with you. I am in strenuous and violent agreement. Oh my, yeah. I see her on camera, and even the energy she gives off is just like, no, that's not it. That's just not it. All right. While Mr. Grizzly is away, it seems that yesterday, and I do not know why I did not know about this beforehand, because I would have mentioned it on the show, there was a debate in the Nova Scotia election. I hope a lot of people watched it, because I hadn't heard that it was happening. Not sure how promoted it was. But during the debate, it seems that healthcare, housing prices, affordability, and coastal protection were the main issues, according to the news. I cannot report very much because I did not see it, but I will hopefully be able to watch it over the weekend and have something for you Monday on it. I'm just so sorry. I had no idea it happened. It just blew right past me. Tim Houston was quoted at once saying, as the carbon tax, well, of course, or carbon pricing, was one of the most heated, most contested part of the debates. And he said, the NDP are beholden to Jagmeet Singh in Ottawa. The Liberals are beholden to Justin Trudeau in Ottawa. I am only beholden to Nova Scotians. And I guess the part he didn't say out loud, but that we were supposed to hear, is because magically I am not beholden to Pierre Poilievre, even though he's got his hand up my butt and it's his voice you're hearing as I speak. Just saying. Liberal Party leader Zach Churchill said that he would replace the system that Nova Scotia has with the cap and trade system, similar to that which similar to that which Quebec has with California, and that Ontario did have with Quebec and California before Premier Doug Ford came along and decided that he was going to impose the federal backstop on all of us by killing the cap and trade program. And then try to gaslight us all into believing that the carbon price was something terrible that Justin Trudeau did to us, even though he made it such that it gets charged here in Ontario. It was all him. He did it. So, and this makes the Doug Ford move to pull out of the cap and trade system even more dumb, because the people that are saying that carbon regulatory pricing itself, or they can't see how it is that it reduces carbon, which it does. It's just simple behavioral economics, and it's worked many times in different other fields. But for those who don't see it, a cap and trade system is way more visible, right? Because there's an actual cap. So people can see what the cap is year after year, and they can see it go down, right? So it might be a little more easy to communicate. And if we're getting to a point now where people are deciding that carbon regulatory pricing that's embedded and transparent is, even though it is the most effective and way to do it, and the most economically efficient way to do it, is not politically popular, because you can say, tax, they are doing this to you, and you can take all the you can kill all public sentiment for it rather easily. Then maybe a cap and trade, even though a little more expensive, is the more publicly acceptable way to go. And if we end up in a situation where more and more provinces and more states start joining that system, then all of a sudden Ontario, which was a pioneering leader and one of the 3 political jurisdictions to form it at the beginning and could shape its future all the way through, well, it's pulled out, and when they finally do join, they might be the 7th or 12th or 15th member, than one of the founding 3, which is, politically not as good as if you had remained and waited for the world to come to you, as it seems might be happening now. So that was just not the best move. So Zach Churchill seems to want to go on to the cap and trade system, which means that there will be climate action being taken, but nobody's going to see an extra X percent on their bill, and that whole line of, that whole avenue of debate for avoiding climate action would no longer exist when it comes to this, to having an actual external price that everyone can see. The NDP leader, Claudia Chender, does not have a firm position on how carbon should be priced yet, which is kind of surprising for the NDP in one way, but not surprising when you think that the federal NDP seems to have also lost its cred on the environment issue. Based on the last election, at least, its climate plan was laughed at, which was kind of interesting. But she says, it's so ironic that you say that you're the voice of action, Tim, when all you do is blame Ottawa for the challenges that people are facing today in Nova Scotia. And that is true. That's a lot of things. That's the common playbook that the premiers are using. But you have to have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a plan. You got to come with something to the table. You can't just say, you're blaming everybody else and not getting it done. But you have to say what you would do. Mr. Churchill did do that in this case. So he probably won that segment of the debate for those who actually want something to happen. Nearly 3 weeks into the campaign, the parties have made a range of promises ranging from cutting taxes to attracting more healthcare workers and building more affordable homes, all while the population deals with record-breaking population growth. The province deals with record-breaking population growth, I should say. At dissolution, the PCs held 34 seats, the Liberals held 14, the NDP 6, and there was 1 independent. people go to the polls on November 26th. And there was that thing I mentioned yesterday with the Nova Scotia election. It seems that there was a bit of a scandal, and I believe it had to do with the PCs, if I'm not mistaken, and it involved Tim Hortons gift cards, which
Yes.
is kind of interesting. According to the CBC's Ali Thompson, the Nova Scotia Liberals are taking legal action against a progressive Conservative candidate after her campaign handed out gift cards at Tim Hortons in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, saying the incident amounts to voter bribery. Oh my God, can you get a more Canadian story? The Liberals want Susan Corkin-Greek removed from the ballot in the upcoming provincial election, but the Nova Scotia Supreme Court confirmed Wednesday it will not hear the case until after voting day on November 26th. On Tuesday, the Liberals filed a complaint with Elections Nova Scotia for alleged vote buying by Corkin-Greek in breach of Section 327 of the Nova Scotia Elections Act. The Act stipulates, quote, every person is guilty of an offense who, directly or indirectly, offers a bribe to induce or influence another person to vote or refrain from voting for or against a particular candidate. Liberal leader Zach Churchill said the party acted after it received information from voters in the constituency that Corkin-Greek was handing out gift cards. Later Tuesday, the PC campaign manager in Lunenburg admitted to buying $51.75 worth of gift cards, each worth $2.07, the price of a small cup of coffee, to hand out to Tim Hortons patrons. The manager, Peter Zwicker, subsequently resigned. The candidate did not know that happened, wrote Zwicker in a statement. I'm sincerely sorry that my actions have caused a distraction to a candidate I have so much respect for. In a news release Wednesday, the Liberals said that given the, quote, admission by Corkin-Greek's campaign manager, it filed a petition under the Controverted Elections Act on Tuesday. Ooh, that sounds so formal. The Controverted Elections Act. The petition seeks a declaration from the Nova Scotia Supreme Court that the incident constitutes corrupt practices under the Election Act. The effect of such findings, if granted by the court, would be to disqualify Ms. Corkin-Greek from being eligible to be elected to sit or in the House. Eligible to be elected or to sit in the House of Assembly. Sorry, I put the emphasis on the wrong word when I was reading it the first time.
The emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Yep. On Wednesday, a spokesperson of the Nova Scotia Judiciary said upon review of the petition, the Controverted Elections Act, and case law, the court determined it would not schedule a date for the matter until after Election Day, November 26th. Corkin-Greek could not immediately be reached for comment Wednesday. I guess not. She was first elected to the Nova Scotia legislature in 2021 to represent Lunenburg and served as the province's Minister of Economic Development. I too would probably take a couple of days off. During a campaign announcement Wednesday, PC leader Tim Houston appeared to deflect blame from Corkin-Greek and onto who described as a party volunteer and accused the Liberals of trying to, quote, weaponize the legal system. Oh my God, Tim Trump. It's $51 in gift cards. Climb down off the cross, buddy.
Yeah. I know. It's still wrong. It's still wrong, but it's like, really?
It's still wrong. But
$50.
come on, man. I mean, is anybody
$50.
really going for a cup of coffee? I mean, come to my campaign event. We have free coffee and donuts. I mean, yes, it is wrong. It is wrong. Like this, and on principle, you have to do it. But at $2.07 cup, $51. I was like, what? 20 people? 21 people? It's like, ooh, this guy is a real criminal, even
Mastermind, yeah.
mastermind. This is so typically Canadian.
Oh, yeah.
I just, Okay. Okay. If you think what's happening here, $51 worth of Tim Hortons coffee, there's absolutely no chance in the world that Zach Churchill's most recent event, the coffee cost less than that, Houston told reporters in Halifax. I'm sorry. Pardon me.
It is funny.
Now, let's not lose sight of the fact that this is Nova Scotian who's volunteering their time to help on a political campaign who maybe made a mistake. But the Liberals said the Elections Act does not make exceptions for small bribes. Quote, dismissing the impact of a small bribe is to diminish and tarnish the integrity of our electoral process and ultimately our democracy, the statement said. It's urging Houston to remove Corkum Greek as a candidate, at which point it would discontinue its court petition. The statement also notes that although Elections Nova Scotia is investigating the initial complaint, it has no authority to provide any remedy other than referring the matter for prosecution. Naomi Shelton, the Director of Policy and Communications at Elections Nova Scotia, confirmed on Tuesday the office was investigating the incident. The petition was filed by John Robart, President of the Liberal Electoral District Association for Lunenburg, against Corkum Greek in Bridgewater.
I know, it's all just so ridiculous.
I know, but it's... Like I said, I get it, but again, I'm reading even the liberal statement here. It's like I'm like dismissing the impact of a small bribe is to diminish and tarnish the integrity of our electoral process and ultimately our democracy. Like I can see like the angel wings and the harps, and it's like, we just cannot have that. Oh my God! And again, I'm laughing at the variables, but not the constant, because I agree the constant is important. But I mean, wow! Like if you're gonna violate a rule, like go all in, man.
Yeah.
$51 at $2.07 a gallon. I mean, I'm sure there's like some person at Elections Nova Scotia looking at this and going, "Oh, come on, man! Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go." So, yeah, this is a little. Part of this is pedantic,
Yes,
and part of this is, however, important principle. It's just the intersection of them both is a bit giggly. Okay. Mr. Grizzly, do you have the clip I sent you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it up and operational here. Just give me a second. Just having some technical difficulties on my end because I got a lot of stuff operational.
Okay.
Background.
While you do that,
we're ready to roll. Yeah, no, we're ready to roll. Okay. I'm just trying to get it up and operational.
Just start it from the beginning. We're just going to do
a lot of tech issues on both ends today because I've got a lot of things running in the background to keep things operational, and I have to take care of a few other things at the same time, so it's really draining the system. But this little Mac Mini is rocking and rolling right on through it. So here we go. Here's Doug Ford talking about Mexico and the free trade deals.
At issue tonight.
Oh, wait, do you want start at the beginning? I correct?
Yeah, start at the beginning because there's stuff in the intro, but just the first segment.
Okay.
Ontario's premier is suggesting Canada cut Mexico out of the North American Free Trade Agreement negotiations.
What I'm proposing to the federal government, we do a bilateral trade deal with the U.S., and if Mexico wants a bilateral trade deal with Canada, God bless them.
Ford accused Mexico of being a backdoor for cheap Chinese imports. The finance minister says she has heard similar concerns from American officials.
Mexico is not acting the way that Canada and the U.S. are when it comes to its economic relationship with China.
Keep going.
Oh, keep going. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah, the segment. Yeah, the first segment is that.
Sorry.
on the table here. How much will that issue, that China factor into these discussions? I'm Rosemary Barton here to break it all down tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Aaron Wary is in for Althea Raj this week. Nice to see you all. I'll start with you, Chantal. What do you make of Ford's comments? There is some truth to what they're saying, that Minister Freeland acknowledged that Chinese parts are making their way to Mexico, and that probably doesn't quite follow the rules of the free trade agreement. What do you make of what he said?
And that is kind of an advance warning on two scores. The first to Mexico, obviously, because this renegotiation or revision is set for 2026. It will happen. But also a warning, I guess, to the federal government that it's going to be harder to lead a response going forward. Because others who have elections coming are not relying on a government that's got maybe 6 to 9 months to an election. That being said, I am uneasy strategically with the notion that Mexico, Canada, Ontario would start sending signals of what they would cave on at a negotiating table before they even get to it.
Yeah. A little curious, too, that the federal government would say that, I think, it's not that they're saying it's on the table, but acknowledging it, because the federal government has put in place tariffs against China, and that was something Donald Trump was quite pleased to hear. So I'm not sure, to Chantal's point, Andrew, what the strategy was there either.
I think Mr. Ford is either panicking and or seeking opportunity in here of the worst and most short-sighted kind. Leave aside the issue of the tariffs. Ordinarily, I would have no problem with Mexico letting stuff in tariff-free, but there is a legitimate security issue when it comes to China. Sure. But to solve, quote-unquote, that problem by bilateralizing a trilateral trade deal is the exact worst response to dealing with the Trump challenge or threat. What we need to be doing is working together, Canada and Mexico, and not just that, but Canada and its allies generally. But let's stick with the trade deal. The worst thing you could do would be to have two bilateral trade deals, Canada-U.S. and U.S.-Mexico, because then United States becomes the hub and we become the spokes. You can locate a plant in the United States and serve all three markets simultaneously. We don't want that. We want a trilateral trade deal that's in our strategic advantage as a country. So for Mr. Ford to be going off half-cocked like this, I think is really unfortunate and not helpful at this particular moment. I agree with Chantal that part of the problem is we've got basically a lame duck government and a lame duck prime minister in Ottawa. And it, I think, advances the argument for saying maybe we need to have an election sooner rather than later. Because if this is replicated by other provinces, this is hurting our national interests and it's dividing the country. If Mr. Ford had his way and we bilateralists for the sake of the Ontario auto industry, there's other parts of the country that are going to pay the price for that who are not going to be terribly happy. So I would hope that the federal government will ignore this particular suggestion.
Aaron?
Well, I don't know that they've ignored it, right? You heard Chrystia Freeland come out a day later and put it pretty delicately, though, to say, yeah, we have heard these concerns about Mexico and, we share them. Or I think she said at one point, we have sympathy for those concerns. I think Chantal kind of hinted at it. It's hard to ignore the fact that Doug Ford may have an election coming up even sooner than the next federal election. Yeah. And it's tempting to read it in that context. I think from the federal government perspective, I think if you go back to the last negotiation, they did have in Jerry Dias and other people these voices sort of outside the tent that would periodically sound more bellicose, would rattle some sabers. Maybe there's something of that going on. I think, though, as Andrew says, there's a thin line between some saber rattling and maybe some sort of reckless getting ahead of things. I think there's also a lot of history between Canada and Mexico. Going back to the previous negotiation when, Canada thought Mexico threw Canada under the bus and Mexico thought Canada had tried to throw them under the bus. So I think maybe there's some of that too. But I also think that this just, again, goes back to Donald Trump. When there's a disruption, a threat like that, you sometimes get people, trying to kind of save themselves or put themselves in a better position at the expense of other people.
Yeah, Chantal?
Okay, but in the end, and I want to pick up on the notion of an election, the first problem is you do not have someone that has a strong mandate to negotiate for Canada. whether you like it or not, there will be an election in this country. People read polls, and it's kind of a free-for-all. And that does argue for an election sooner rather than later, so that Canadians can decide, and they can decide that Justin Trudeau is fine to be dealing with Donald Trump. He did okay in the previous round, but he cannot continue to pretend that he is that same person with that same level of moral authority anymore.
No,
And
but
when
we're not.
Chrystia Freeland-
Go ahead.
Yeah, but when Chrystia Freeland says that, she may have a point, but it also comes across as she's trying not to antagonize the Ontario Premier because there's a federal election coming.
Yeah, except, I mean, they're not dealing with this issue until January, and the issue of
That's tomorrow.
CUSMA, yeah, and the issue of CUSMA is 2026. So do they not have the right to make positions and take positions until then?
But the thing is that's not the issue.
Right.
The thing is, if Mexico and Canada are going to start shooting at each other, it only helps one person at the negotiating table, neither of whom is the Mexican or the Canadian representative.
It's the guy who likes negotiating, Andrew.
Mr. Ford can take whatever position he likes behind closed doors, but to be making public statements like this in a way that is divisive and counterproductive in terms of a coherent negotiating strategy with the Americans, which I will stress means a united Canadian position. It means a united Canadian-Mexico position, and it needs, in a broader ambit beyond trade, it requires a unity amongst the democracies. Mr. Trump has been very clear in saying that he regards America's enemies as its allies and its allies as its enemies now. So he'll be cozying up to Russia, but he'll be doing everything he possibly can to antagonize America's erstwhile allies, and that would include Canada. He is essentially a nihilist, and he will be looking for ways, for example, to divide us amongst ourselves. So I think we need to have a conversation amongst all of Canada's leaders, amongst the different political parties, between the provinces and the feds, on working out some kind of, it doesn't mean everybody has to march in lockstep to whatever the Prime Minister says, but it does mean we've got to figure out some way to approach this in a relatively unified fashion, because otherwise the Americans will pick us apart.
Aaron.
Yeah, look, I think one complication with having an election is that the Liberals are probably banking on the fact or the idea that they can spend a few months at least dealing with Donald Trump and sort of proving their mettle again to Canadians and then carry that into the next election. But to Andrew's point, I do think the Doug Ford comments raise the issue that there is not going to be, or it seems unlikely to be, a united front this time around in Canada. Last time around, the Liberals were able to put former Conservative cabinet ministers that were in Stephen Harper's government on their advisory panel. They had Brian Mulroney on their side. I can't imagine the Liberals and Conservatives, or I have a hard time imagining the Liberals and Conservatives working together this time. You had Pierre Poilievre already tweeting that he was, kind of mocking the Team Canada approach. So I do think, as much as the Liberals might want to, show themselves, prove themselves again in their ability to deal with Donald Trump, the domestic debate is going to be much tougher than it was last time.
Yeah, Chantal,
and it's not only, but they're not going to get to prove themselves because, as you heard this week, and it makes total strategic sense, the Trump team will wait out the Trudeau team until there is an election. Now, how about the notion that Justin Trudeau has been looking for a reason to explain why he should lead the country for another 4 years? And how about the fact that his main success has been handling Trump in the previous episode? So if he's looking for a narrative, he needs a mandate. No one is going to take him seriously in Washington unless he gets a new mandate or is gone.
And it's a legitimate debate. If we want an overarching issue to frame an election around, which party is best prepared and which leader is best prepared to deal with Donald Trump is a legitimate issue to have an election over.
Well. That was interesting. Mr. Beaver will rejoin in just a second. He had to log off for a few minutes because he was having some technical glitches on his end. Hopefully things will... there, I think he's just rejoining now. Yeah, hang on, I'll bring him on in. Oops, I don't know where. There we go. Sir.
There we go. The phone was getting hot. So yeah, I wanted to play the full discussion here because when I was mentioning yesterday, Doug Ford talking about this, thinking Doug might have some designs on being prime minister one day. He's testing the waters with some of these pronouncements, but just how unhelpful it is. It's like this guy's way out over his skis.
Oh, yeah.
And the other way that he's way out over his skis that we learned about yesterday, I'll give you a little context. We have been talking about a guy named Timothy Snyder, who wrote the book on tyranny. The lesson 1 in the book on tyranny, because it has 20 lessons, is do not obey in advance. He says, most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do. Yesterday, came out in the news, this is by Isaac Callan of Global, the Ford government has signed a deal worth roughly $100 million with Elon Musk's Starlink company to provide high-speed internet to parts of northern and rural Ontario. On Thursday, the province announced Starlink had won a competitive bidding process to run a satellite-based internet program for roughly 15,000 households and businesses beginning in June 2025. Quote, our government is pleased to work with Starlink to offer a highly advanced satellite internet service that will help people living and working in the hardest to reach areas of the province access high-speed internet, Kinga Surma, Minister of Infrastructure, said in a statement. Quote, our government knows how essential it is to have access to online services and supports, which is why we are using all viable options and technologies, including fiber, fixed wireless, and satellite, to ensure every community across the province has access by end of 2025. Never mind that the federal government just handed a multi-billion-dollar loan for us to be able to do that with Telesat here in Canada. But okay. Surma also said the value of the deal was roughly $100 million, with registrations for the program set to begin in the spring. Starlink uses low-orbiting satellites to deliver fast internet in places where traditional connections are harder to install and maintain. It is run and engineered by SpaceX, which also oversees Musk's rocket program. Infrastructure Ontario said the deal included a requirement that Starlink engage with Indigenous communities, which could be served by the program. The engagement should also, where possible, create local economic opportunities, training, and jobs. Starlink has already demonstrated the technology in Northern Ontario through a rollout to the Pikangikum First Nation in 2020. The award of the significant contract to Musk's internet business comes as the entrepreneur prepares to take a key role in Donald Trump's second presidency, in charge of a department responsible for finding government waste. And that's why the timing of this is particularly not good, optic-wise. Musk took center stage during the election campaign, advising Trump, promoting his content on his social media platform X and appearing with him. SpaceX, which is in charge of the Starlink program, won after a, quote, robust and transparent and competitive and fair technical and financial evaluation of multiple qualified parties, said Michael Lindsay, CEO of Infrastructure Ontario. The Trump administration Musk is set to be a part of has promised to introduce fees on all foreign imports, including those from Ontario. During the campaign, Trump threatened to levy the blanket tariffs of 10% on or more on all goods coming into the U.S., with even heavier trade restrictions placed on Chinese goods. He also said he would look to renegotiate the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, NAFTA's replacement. The trade pact is up for negotiation in 2026. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has dismissed the threat, suggesting he doesn't think tariffs on products from the province are likely. Quote, he tried that last time, and that didn't last too long. It lasted about 4 weeks, Ford said the day after Trump won the U.S. election. So Trump Doug Trump, maybe thinking that if he announces a little contract for Leon's, that maybe we won't get some tariffs because, this is all transactional now. But I mean, just 1 and 9 days later, here I am rolling over and showing you my belly for scritches. Doug Ford, stand in awe of the leadership. All right. Tonight, if you are interested in all the stuff related to Coots, on the 5th Estate at 9 p.m. on CBC, there will be an episode titled, did I not note the title?
I guess you didn't.
I think I did not note the title of it. Conspiracy and Coots. I did note the title. Conspiracy and Coots. And that will be on the 5th Estate at 9 p.m. I believe it is tonight. And they have a segment in there where they're interviewing 2 of the Coots 4. I'm thinking the 2 that had pled guilty, so they didn't have a trial. And one of them is talking about what they're worried about. And the quote goes something like this: "The government will call the Insurrection Act. Then what happens is the UN comes in with Chinese troops, and there is an imminent invasion of Chinese troops on Canadian and American soil." That's what this person's fear was, that this is where we were going.
Okay.
Now, mind you, that China, even though it is being very aggressive on the international scene and very much saber-rattling with Taiwan, and they don't do the invasion US style. I haven't seen it yet in my lifetime. They do other things, and they're not great. But this type of invasion that he's like Hollywood cinema movie invasion, China is way more subtle than that. I'm pretty sure that China is a little more interested in occupying the China Sea area than crossing halfway across the globe to invade us. So yeah, these 2 people were found not guilty of conspiring to kill a police officer and only had weapons and possession and mischief charges on which they were found guilty. And there's a criminologist from the University of Alberta that says that this type of extremism needs to be taken more seriously in Canada. Quote, "This is treated as a standard series of street-level crime. Because of what they have got, because of that, they have gotten away really lightly, in my opinion. Both were sentenced to 6.5 years." So it looks like it's going to be a pretty interesting in-depth investigation into how it is some of the most radicalized within this movement think and what it is they fear is coming. And it's always good to know that, so that you know what you're dealing with. So I'll probably be taking a chance to look at that. So I figured it might catch your attention too if I told you about it. You want to talk some sports, Mr. Grizzly?
Well, the Grey Cup is on Sunday.
I knew you were going to say that.
And it's questionable, who's going to win. It's Winnipeg and Toronto, the Argos against the Blue Bombers, and who is going to win this one? That's up for debate. Both starting quarterbacks for both teams are out. They were both injured. Zach Collaros broke his leg for Winnipeg.
Oh, wow.
And we had a similar situation for the Argos starting quarterback. So you got backup quarterbacks on both teams. Now, both backup quarterbacks came in, fulfilled their duty, and pulled out the victory for both teams. So who's going to win this one? I honestly don't know. I will cheer for the Argos because, in an East meets West classic matchup in the Grey Cup, I live in the East-ish, so I'll take for the Eastern team. Had it been the other way around and Montreal had beaten Toronto and Saskatchewan had beaten Winnipeg, I would have been difficult because I would cheer for Montreal, but I mean, come on, Saskatchewan's everybody's second team, right? Who doesn't love the Saskatchewan Roughriders? They have the best fans in the league by far. So, who would I cheer for in a match like that? Well, it doesn't matter. It's not happening. So it's an easy one for me. I'm cheering for the Argos. So let's go Argos. The double blue.
Okay.
The oldest professional sporting franchise on planet Earth with the same name. Did you know that?
Really?
Yep. They've never changed the name. They've been the Toronto Argonauts since day one, and they are the oldest team in the world with their original name.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So according here to Jesse Capigato of CBC Sports, says that this is the Bombers' 5th consecutive appearance in the Grey Cup, which is quite a reversal for a franchise that went 29 years without a championship before finally breaking through with back-to-back titles in 2019 and 2021.
Because there was no league. The league did not play. There was no play in 2020 because of COVID.
Exactly. No team has experienced a run like this since Edmonton reached 6 straight Grey Cups from 77 to 82, winning the last 5, as future NFL star Warren Moon blossomed into the CFL's best player. But the line between dynasty and laughingstock can be painfully thin, asked the 90s Buffalo Bills. Since going back-to-back, the Bombers have suffered 2 straight upset losses in the Grey Cup. The Argos beat them in 22 as a 4.5-point underdog before Montreal shocked them last year as an 8-point underdog. Winnipeg is a 9-point favorite to defeat Toronto this Sunday, implying the Bombers have an around an 80% chance of recapturing the Grey Cup. But if they don't, they'll become the first team in 38 years to lose 3 in a row. No pressure. 2 years ago in Regina, Chad Kelly came off the bench in the 4th quarter of the Grey Cup to replace the Argos' injured starter and engineered the go-ahead touchdown drive in Toronto's 24-23 upset of Winnipeg. Turned out Kelly was pretty good. He won the CFL's Most Outstanding Player award the next season as the Argos went 16-2 before face-planting in the East Final against eventual champion Montreal. I like the way sports writers write. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of the best writers are sports writers.
I know. After serving a 9-game suspension to start the season for violating the league's gender-based violence policy, Kelly appeared to be finding his footing at the right time. He accounted for 5 touchdowns in Toronto's 58-38 win over Ottawa in the first round of the playoffs and had the Argos up 2 scores on Montreal in last week's East Final rematch. But Kelly broke his ankle late in the 3rd quarter, pressing backup Nick Arbuckle into his first CFL playoff action. The 6th-year journeyman did the job, completing 5 of 8 throws for 73 yards and getting Toronto in range for a key field goal before the Argos hung on for a costly 30-28 win over the CFL's top-ranked team. Arbuckle didn't play much this year, even when Kelly was suspended. Before the East Final, his most notable appearance came in a meaningless regular season finale against Edmonton. Arbuckle put up some impressive numbers in that game, throwing for 378 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception in a 31-30 overtime loss to the Elks. But the Blue Bombers are a different beast. They surrendered a CFL low 20.3 points per game this season as shutdown cornerback Tyrell Ford ranked 2nd in the league with 7 interceptions. Wow. Those are good numbers. I mean, I don't know much about football, but I know that those are good numbers. Winnipeg's own Brady Oliveira led the CFL in rushing yards for the 2nd straight season and is once again a finalist for the Most Outstanding Player award, along with Hamilton quarterback Bo Levi-Mitchell. I hope I pronounced that right. Bo Levi-Mitchell? Levy?
Bo Levi-Mitchell.
Yeah, Bo Levi-Mitchell. Oliveira is also up for most... Oliveira?
No, Bo Levi-Mitchell. Or Levy. Yeah.
Oh,
you know what?
I don't know if it's Levy or Levi.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Oliveira is also up for Most Outstanding Canadian, which he won last year after becoming just the 15th player in CFL history to gain 2,000 yards from scrimmage in a season. And that's how you know I don't watch it all that much, that I'm a bandwagoner, because I can't pronounce the name of the players when I read them. Because if I watched it, I would know, because I would hear the announcer say it, and then it would register. That's how you can always tell if the person reading you the sports news actually watches the sports that they're giving you the news about. I didn't. Oliveira's stellar running helped Winnipeg rebound from an 0-4 start to finish 11-7 and top the West Division standing for the fourth straight time. Hat tip also to a semi-miraculous wind gust that helped the Bombers win their regular season finale at Montreal to clinch the division and first-round bye. He added 119 yards rushing and a touchdown in last week's decisive 38-22 victory over Saskatchewan in the West Final. That surprised me, actually, how decisive it was. On Sunday, Winnipeg will need Oliveira to help open things up for veteran quarterback Zach Collaros. He was sacked a total of 12 times, ouch, as Toronto swept the season series 16-14 and 14-11 wins in weeks 8 and 19, respectively. Time and again in pro football, we've seen an overwhelming pass rush pave the way for a major upset. At first glance, the quarterback mismatch seems too big for Toronto to overcome. Arbuckle, all due respect, is a nobody who's never appeared on the biggest stage in Canadian football. Ouch. While Collaros is a two-time MOP and three-time Grey Cup champ who was the MVP of the 2021 title in the game. Okay. I can see. Okay, but still, ouch.
Yeah.
But the Bombers QB is 36 years old, and he threw almost as many interceptions, 15, as touchdowns, 17, this season, for an offense that ranks second worst in the league in points per game and 6 out of 9 teams in yards per play. On the other hand, that might be enough for Winnipeg's dominant defense, barring a storybook Grey Cup debut by Arbuckle. Considering all that, along with those 2 regular season rock fights, I guess the safest thing to predict is another close, low-scoring contest. But as the Bombers can attest, anything can happen in the Grey Cup. That's a well-written article.
He's a good writer.
Yeah. Jesse Capagato?
Mm-hmm.
A1. It was actually fun to read.
Well, this is the thing. Like, sports writers tend to be able to write stories about things that aren't always exciting. And they find a way to make you engaged. And non-sports fans like will become avid sports readers when you have a good sports writer. My sister, who is a writer, who told me a long time ago, she said some of the best writers are sports writers, and she named off a bunch of them and said, read any of the books they write when they write them. They're great from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn McGregor? Is it Glenn or Greg? Former sports writer for the Ottawa Citizen, had published a number of books, and he was one of my sister's writing heroes when it came to sports writers. So yeah, they're always great. And you got to remember what's his name, who wrote for Sports Illustrated for decades, whose name is escaping me right now. I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. Absolutely brilliant writer. I wish I could think of his name off the top of my head, but he's retired now. He's just one of those guys that everything he writes is worth your read, even if you don't even like the subject matter or the topic. He's just so engaging.
Nice. Now, if you happen to be in the area of the Grey Cup, there are activities. So at 11 a.m. this morning, if you're in the area, there's the Calgary Grey Cup Pancake Breakfast at the Billy Bishop Carrisdale Legion, where your cowboy hats would meet Tough Enough, the official horse mascot of the Calgary Stampeders. There you go. There's the CFL Legion's luncheon at 11 as well, and there's the Street Festival at Canada Place from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And there's activities at the Vancouver Convention Center as well, both east and west. And from 6:30 to 9 p.m. tonight, there's a gala dinner open to fans and players. Black tie and Team Pride colors. And there'll be a performance by 5440. So that's kind of cool. And if you're by the Vancouver Harbor waterfront at 9:30, it seems that there will be a big drone show. And I'm guessing that is somehow related to the CFL thing. It says, watch as dazzling displays of light and movement and creativity tell the story of our vibrant city and the iconic Grey Cup. So I guess that's what's going on in Vancouver if you're celebrating for Grey Cup week. And then on Saturday, there's a Spirit of Edmonton breakfast.
Which is always
the Street Festival will continue. Yeah.
And they'll hand out a lot of sluice juice.
Oh, okay.
Sluice juice. It's an Edmonton Elks, formerly Esks sporting tradition at the Grey Cup, and at home games they have a big bucket of sluice juice.
Okay,
Basically
that's
vodka
sluice
orange.
juice.
Basically vodka orange juice, but they call it sluice juice. They have it in kegs, and they just hand out. I had some when I was at the game this summer, which Ottawa won on the very last second of the game with a field goal to pull ahead after a stupid play by Edmonton.
Mm.
And I was there with
So-
Emmy Chris at the game, and then we're watching it, and he's like, "Okay," and now they're going to blow it, and I go, "How could they blow it?" And they just scored. They pulled ahead. All they got to do is just kick the ball down the field. But what they did was they kicked the ball out of bounds, which means Ottawa automatically gets the ball on the 50. They had one play, got the clock down to 1 second, got it within field goal range, got up, kicked a field goal, won by a point.
Oh,
We're
heartbreaker.
down by 2 at that point. It's like, with no time left on the clock, kick the field goal to win the game.
Jeez.
He's like, "Yep, that's Edmonton. That's how we lose." Snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
So the events continue at Canada Place at the Convention Center, and tomorrow from noon to 2, there's going to be a cheer extravaganza event. So for those who like cheerleading, and at the Vancouver Convention Center West, there will be Sam Roberts Band and the Trues in concert. There'll be a backyard street partying day featuring Dan Cole at the BC Place, Terry Fox Plaza. There'll be a fan march at 1:30 p.m. from Canada Place to the Terry Fox Plaza. And there will be, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. a
Massive
pregame block
quantities
party
of beer
featuring Biff
consumed.
Naked at BC Place.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well,
And then,
look, I don't know if you've been to there's always big Grey Cup parties, and every team has their own themed event. And one of the best ones to go to is always the Rough Riders party, because they bring in literally thousands of people will come from Saskatchewan for the Grey Cup every year. And I've met people who have been to like 30, 40, 50 Grey Cups. I'm like, damn, you have to save all year for that, because it's an expensive process to get to where the Grey Cup is, get your hotel room, get your tickets. You're there for a week. I'm like, this is a vacation for people, and they plan their year around it. And I'm like, damn, I've been to 2 Grey Cup games, and I was actually really tempted to fly out for this one because I was able to find a cheap flight. Looked good. It was promising, and I had a place to stay, but it was like, oh, the ticket price is it's pushing it. The ticket was more than my flight. So, I don't have revenue stream right now. I'm living off my severance and savings, so it wasn't a good idea. Now, that being said, I do have to go to Calgary in a couple of weeks. I'm flying out on a Thursday, and I fly back on the Monday at the last weekend of the month. I've got some business to do out there, along with some networking as well. And I'm going to, do some hiking, and if there's snow on the ground, maybe get some skiing in. So it's a working and a working trip, along with a little bit of leisure in there as well. I was struggling for the word leisure. I need one more cup of coffee. So just before I go to get that cup of coffee, I've got something here in the chat that I'm going to post. It is a link to the first book published that I narrated recently. It's called Under the Lights: A Season of Growth, a Father-Son Baseball Journey, written by Patrick Dunn, narrated by yours truly. There's a link in the chat. You can go right to Audible, and you can either buy it or you can listen to. There is a 5-minute preview, which I actually have here if you want me to play it, but. It's just whatever. Anyway,
not
so
today,
my
but we
first
can play it on another
first
day
book
because
I've narrated.
I got low phone battery.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Oh yeah. No problem. So anyway, it's my first book. Yeah, no, I understand that. My first book is now first book that I've narrated. It's not my book, obviously. My first book that I've narrated is now published and available for download. If you click the link I put in the chat, you can go there and make the purchase, and it's not expensive. It's like $8, I think, or something like that. So you can help a fella out, because I get paid on sales. I didn't get paid to do it. I get paid royalties. So we need to, we need to make some sales.
Okay. All right. I'll do a couple more sports things while you get your coffee, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. Cool.
And for those who like music, the halftime show for the Grey Cup this year, the artist will be the Jonas Brothers. So if you're a big fan of them, you might want to tune in. On the hockey front, there was a big event that happened yesterday because the Edmonton Oilers' Connor McDavid became the fourth fastest NHL player to reach 1,000 points. It seems that he is the 99th player in history to reach the 1,000 points told, but like I said, the fourth fastest to ever do it. He scored a goal to record his 1,000th career point and set up Daryl Nurse's overtime winner for good measure as his Edmonton Oilers defeated the Nashville Predators 3-2 on Thursday. He says, it's a special moment. I said it the other day. This is legendary stuff. And this is Leon Draisaitl, his good friend, who's factored in on 446 of McDavid's 1,001 points. Quote, to witness that and to be part of it and to have seen him grow up from when he was 18 and we first met him, it is pretty cool, pretty amazing to be part of that. I'm very proud of him, very happy for him. So McDavid was playing just in his 659th game to become the 99th player, as I mentioned, to hit the magical plateau. He became the fourth fastest player ever to reach the milestone, trailing only Wayne Gretzky, who did it in 424 games, Mario Lemieux, who did it in 513, and Mike Bossy, who did it in 656. At 27, he also becomes the fourth youngest player to reach 1,000 points. Really big. To put it in perspective, McDavid did it in 98 fewer games than Sidney Crosby, who was the last player to reach 1,000 points was the Toronto Maple Leafs forward John Tavares, doing so on December 11th, 2023, in his 1,109th game. It only took McDavid 58 games to go from 900 points to 1,000. Jeez. Of course, the question came about, can he possibly get to the 2,000 point mark in his career? If not him, who else? That's the only question I have, Draisaitl said. I never bet against Connor McDavid. I've learned that over the last 10 years, it wouldn't surprise me. Hey, if you get one, why not two? In soccer, according to Neil Davidson from the Canadian Press, the independent report into the Olympic involving members of the Canadian women's soccer team coaching staff leaves as many questions as answers. But it's clear, quote, the practice of conducting surreptitious surveillance of opponents predated this summer's Paris Olympics. As a result, Canada Soccer says women's head coach Bev Priestman, assistant coach Jasmine Mander, and analyst Joey Lombardi, all serving a one-year FIFA ban for their role in the scandal, will not be back. Quote, these three individuals currently suspended by FIFA will not be returning, Canada Soccer said in a news release. New head coach for the women's national team will commence shortly. The findings
I think this is the right move.
Yeah. The findings of the independent investigator revealed that the incident itself was a symptom of a difficult and unacceptable past culture within the national teams, Canada Soccer Chief Executive Officer and General Secretary Kevin Blue and President and Board Chair Peter Ogrusso said in a separate statement posted to social media. Quote, quite simply, while players on the national teams performed admirably, cultural standards and management of the programs dating back several years fell short of expectations. The investigation is incomplete in that former coach John Herdman has yet to give evidence, with Canada Soccer saying, quote, it has, quote, initiated a proceeding with respect to Mr. Herdman under its disciplinary code. Potential violations of the Canada Soccer Code of Conduct and Ethics by the former head coach of the men's national team were identified, Canada Soccer said in its release. Added Blue and Ogrusso, quote, with this investigation now concluded, we are in the process of taking disciplinary steps. These actions will be private. According to Canada Soccer's disciplinary code, sanctions available to a discipline hearing can range from a written notice of admonishment to a lifetime suspension. In the interim, the governing body changes coming in the wake of the independent report by Sonia Regenbogen from the law firm of Matthew Dinsdale and Clark. Canada Soccer unethical behaviors, ethics training for coaches and staffs, and the creation of a new independent committee. They also say that those wanting the full story of what happened in Paris will be disappointed. Canada Soccer did not release the entire report, which is said to be some 400-point summary it did make public contains some 135 redactions. Canada Soccer said it supported Regenbogen's decision that while the investigation would not accept evidence from anonymous sources, those who did take part would not have their identity revealed. It said it did so, quote, to strike the best possible balance of transparency, disclosing as much information as possible with our legal and ethical responsibility to maintain confidentiality of personal identities, especially in the context of a human resources investigation. The conclusions and findings are consistent and not flattering, regardless of redactions, Blue said in an interview. In addition to the summary report, Canada Soccer issued a news release, 2 background documents, and a blog post from its CEO and president. The report states there was internal pushback in Paris over the drone use. Quote, some assistant coaches and staff members on opponents but did not feel they could challenge the authority of the head coach. 2 of the women's national team acts of improper surveillance predating the 2024 Paris Olympics, Canada Soccer said in its release. That is not good.
No, it is not.
If you don't even feel you can challenge the authority of the head coach, there is more stuff going on culturally there than one would suspect.
Yeah, there's some. Yeah, that's let's say toxic workplace, I would suggest.
Holy crap. Blue said on a personal level that he, quote, felt disappointment and frustration like I think many people feel after the scandal. The lack of a comment from Herdman is perhaps not surprising given information contained in the FIFA Appeals Committee ruling on the scandal suggested drone use started under him. Herdman took over the women's team in 2011 and switched to the Canadian men in January 2018. He quit Canada Soccer last August to take over the Toronto FC. Canada Soccer said Herdman was unable to be interviewed by Regenbogen due to scheduling issues. There was more than a 3-month window to meet, given Regenbogen was tasked with the review on July 30th. She delivered it to Canada Soccer on November 5th. Herdman, who had said to cooperate with the review, has declined to comment on the drone scandal, citing, quote, the integrity of the investigation. But he has repeated that his record was clean at the Olympics and World Cups. Quote, I can again clarify that at a FIFA World Cup pinnacle event, Olympic Games, and at a Youth World Cup, those activities had not been undertaken, he said in July, and I've got nothing else to say on that matter. Toronto FC issued a brief statement on Herdman's behalf. Quote, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is in receipt of the public report from Canada Soccer today outlining the findings of the external investigation into scouting practices and potential involvement of current members of the Toronto FC staff, the statement read. The organization will thoroughly review and process the report's findings over the coming days. Both MLSC and Toronto FC will reserve any further comment until that review process has been completed. An immediate response. The report does not clear Blue and Oguruso of any knowledge or involvement in the drone use, and it says the Canadian players did not see the footage obtained surreptitiously at the Olympics. At least there's that. There was another drone incident in June at Copa America that resulted in a member of the Canada men's team staff having their credential revoked and Canada Soccer being fined. During the ensuing disciplinary process by the tournament organizer, CONMEBOL, Canada Soccer argued the drones filming an empty pitch for the purposes of a motivation and promotional video and did not inappropriately film a training session. I find that the use of a drone at the Copa America tournament was very different to the Paris Olympics drone incident, Regenbogen wrote. So this seems to have been confirmed to be a fact. The report also current men's coach Jesse Marsh became aware. He told staff that drone filming, quote, for legitimate purpose such as filming the men's team's own practice sessions must be cleared in advance. The Paris scandal unfolded when New Zealand's Olympic Committee complained to the IOC's integrity unit that drones had been flown over a pair of pre-tournament practice sessions ahead of its opening game against Canada. Mander and Lombardi were sent home immediately. Priestman initially withdrew from coaching the opening game, but was subsequently also sent home by Canada Soccer after more information came to light. The case was referred to the FIFA Appeal Committee, which banned Priestman and the 2 staffers from taking part in any football-related activity for a period of 1 year, quote, for offensive behavior and violation of the principles of fair play, end quote. Canada would have stocked 6 points at the Olympic tournament, and Canada Soccer fined 200,000 Swiss francs, or $306,470 Canadian. Canada Soccer announced the independent review following that ruling, saying it would, quote, continue to communicate regularly about this issue and take swift, decisive steps to restore public trust. So, big development.
Yeah.
And the final little bit of sports world. is that CBC has announced that it will be broadcasting 17 PWHL Saturday games. Boom.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because last year
Mr.
I think it was only available on YouTube.
Right, exactly. So this is
for
a
the
big
most
step
part.
forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
massive.
Mr. Grizzly, do you have anything to say before we wrap it up?
No, not really. I think we've pretty much covered it. There's about a dozen other things we could go into, but we'd be here for 4 hours, and we don't have the time, and I have other things to do. Like I said, it's just. But I will put this on the screen. If anybody wants to scan it, that will take you directly to the link. You can see that little QR code. That'll take you to Audible, and if you want to make a purchase of that book that I narrated, it would help me out. So I really would appreciate that. If you can do it, that'd be great. And if not, no worries. No worries. If you could just share that link with people. There is a 5-minute preview of the book, so it gives you an idea of what it's about and how it sounds. So yeah, if you can scan that, or you can go directly to the link that I will put on the screen. It's a long link though, so I don't expect you to necessarily copy that, but I will put it back in the chat for those of you who would like to, surf on over and check it out. I know it's self-serving, but you got to promote, right? Got to promote.
Absolutely.
It's all about shameless self-promotion
Absolutely.
these days.
Absolutely. Your corner. All right, so Cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember that sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless, and you have the mouth from which we want the word to come. So tell your peeps and poops all about us. Very important. Right? Now, if you don't want to have to, thanks to the Ray Girl. She sponsors our pod page, podpage.com/TrueNorthEagerBeaver. Lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. Go there, or if you scan that QR code that's disappeared, and you click subscribe, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. It's that easy. Now, if you would like to support us in other ways, so make like Kit and Elaine, surf on down to it. And then you will find our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Oh, it seems that my camera has disappeared facing front, so you can still hear me, but can't see me.
You're frozen on the screen here, but that's fine.
All right, so we'll do that this way. So I'll be a disembodied voice.
There you go.
So please go there, click like, share, and subscribe. Now, if you'd like to support us financially to help us underwrite the costs of producing this, you can go to our coffee page where you will find our tip jar. The QR code by Mr. Grizzly's head will bring you there.
So we can now see you because you've got your other camera feed up, but you've got no audio through that one yet. So we're still working out some glitches, as you can tell.
There you go. So
I need to keep both feeds up for you to be audible, though, because if I take one down, you won't be heard. So
yes. So that's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters. And there you will find our tip jar. Anything you can contribute would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so.
Oops, sorry, that was my bad.
Sorry, okay. Okay. Now, if you can't contribute financially, don't worry. The gift of your attention is the one that matters most to us, and we like to hear from you. So write to us at truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and now at Blue Sky at TrueEager, Facebook, True North Eager Beaver, and right down here if you're listening on YouTube in the comments section. We read everything, and we thank you for your contributions because it helps make the show better. Because democracy is something that you do. You have a by-election in Cloverdale, Langley City in BC coming up in December, and some elections provincially in Nova Scotia on November 26th, 11 days from now. So plan your vote, volunteer, all that good stuff. You know what to do. All right. And if there's something going on that you want to write some letters about, remember, that's always something that you can do. Okay? It could be a tough world out there, kids and cubs. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself and have a beaverific weekend. Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom?
Don't go overboard on this weekend if you're watching the Grey Cup game. In other words, feel free to indulge in beverages of your choice, but try not to go overboard so it doesn't ruin your Monday morning.
Indeed. And if you happen to be among those who like a little wager, please do so very responsibly and in a limited manner. and do not get emotionally invested in the outcome.
I'm not a betting man, so I don't. Once in a while, I'll be like, all right, I'll outcome of the game. I pick up the last round, right? That's my that's my betting.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Grizzly, please cue the cock.
I can do that.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.
Sounds like you've got an air conditioner running in the background there.
Yeah.
It's really loud.
CPU working overtime.
Yeah, I think so. Alrighty. I don't really have anything for an Easter egg day, to be honest with you. There's a few things I need to address next week that I didn't have time to get to today, but I can try and address them if I remember by Monday. Some comments that I read about from a few different folks, and it's like, yeah, we can address them. And nothing bad, nothing harsh, just some constructive criticism, if you will. And, we'll address it when we have the time to do so, but it won't be today. So, yeah, that's kind of the only Easter egg I've got for today, is to address some other Easter eggs.
All right. I'll make a note of it. Everyone, have a beaver and happy great cupping.
Yes. All right. We'll see you.